The auditorium buzzed with an electric energy, a symphony of murmurs and camera shutters punctuating the air. Rows of eager attendees leaned forward in their seats, eyes fixed on the stage where microphones gleamed under bright spotlights. This wasn't just any debate, it was the event of the season, live-streamed globally to millions. The topic? The future of America, youth perspective. Names like Dr. Evelyn Hartman and Barron Trump had drawn crowds from every corner of society. Students clutching notebooks, journalists armed with recorders, influencers streaming it all on social media. The stakes were high. Reputations would be made or shattered tonight. Dr. Evelyn Hartman sat poised at the panel table, her tailored blazer exuding authority. Known for dismantling elitism with razor-sharp wit, she carried herself with an unshakable confidence that masked years of battling entrenched systems. Across from her sat Barron Trump, now 24, his presence quieter but no less compelling. Once dismissed as a shadowy figure overshadowed by his family name, he'd recently emerged as an advocate for environmental sustainability and mental health awareness. His calm demeanor hinted at untapped depths, through setting the stage for what could either be a clash of titans or an unexpected alliance. Evelyn leaned into the microphone, her voice slicing through the room like a blade. "Mr. Trump," she began, her tone dripping with condescension. "You speak passionately about climate change policy, but isn't it ironic? Your privileged upbringing shields you from its harshest realities. Aren't you simply riding the coattails of your family's legacy?" Gasps rippled through the audience, some nodding approvingly while others shifted uncomfortably. Evelyn pressed on, her gaze unwavering. "Tell me, Barron, do you truly understand the sacrifices required to create meaningful change?" For a moment, silence hung heavy in the room. Then Barron spoke, his voice steady yet laced with emotion. "I won't deny my privilege, Dr. Hartman, but let me tell you something privilege doesn't shield you from the crushing weight of public judgment. Growing up in the spotlight taught me resilience. I wouldn't trade for anything. And yes, I've made mistakes, but dismissing my advocacy as mere posturing undermines the very dialogue we're here to foster." He paused, letting his words sink in before adding softly, "Perhaps instead of tearing each other down, we should focus on lifting others up." A beat passed, then another, and suddenly, applause erupted like thunder, and cheers clapped wildly, feet stomped against the floor, and cheers echoed off the walls. For the first time, Barron allowed himself a small smile, though his eyes betrayed lingering nerves. Beside him, Evelyn sat frozen, her lips parted slightly as if grappling with how thoroughly she'd underestimated him. Cameras flashed furiously, capturing the seismic shift in perception. Little did they know, this moment would ripple far beyond the confines of the auditorium, reshaping both their lives in ways neither could predict. That night, Evelyn sat alone in her dimly lit study, the glow of her laptop screen casting shadows across her face. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as she scrolled through endless tweets, dissecting the debate. "Evelyn Hartman outclassed by Barron Trump," one headline read. Another mocked her for being out of touch. She clenched her jaw, frustration bubbling beneath her polished exterior. "Am I losing my edge?" she whispered to herself, staring at the reflection in her darkened window. For years, she'd prided herself on exposing hypocrisy and dismantling privilege. But now, the world seemed to have moved on without her. Social media activists with viral hashtags overshadowed her academic rigor, yet deep down she refused to let go of her relevance. Determination flared within her. If she couldn't win this battle outright, she'd find another way. Meanwhile, Barron stood on the balcony of his Manhattan apartment, the city lights twinkling like distant stars. His phone buzzed incessantly. Messages poured in from supporters, praising his poise during the debate. But amidst the accolades were barbed comments questioning his sincerity. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Growing up in the shadow of his family name had taught him resilience, but it also left scars. Every step forward felt like proving himself all over again. Was he doing enough? Did his advocacy truly matter, or was it just noise in an already crowded space? He glanced at the skyline, searching for clarity. "You're more than your last name," he reminded himself quietly, though doubt lingered like a stubborn dog. The next morning, Evelyn dove headfirst into research about Barron's advocacy work. Articles detailed his campaigns for mental health awareness and environmental sustainability. Videos showed him speaking passionately at community events, far removed from the glitz of high-profile debates. Each discovery chipped away at her preconceived notions. Her assistant, Rachel, knocked gently before entering. "Dr. Hartman, you've been at this for hours. Are you okay?" Evelyn didn't look up. "I underestimated him," she admitted, her voice tinged with both awe and irritation. "He's not what I thought he was." Rachel hesitated. "Maybe that's why people responded so strongly. They saw something real." Evelyn frowned, the weight of those words sinking in. By midday, Barron found himself scrolling through harsh critiques online. One commenter wrote, "Another rich kid using activism for clout." Another accused him of lacking depth. Each accusation gnawed at his confidence. His best friend Mia called later. "Hey stranger, you holding up okay?" Barron exhaled sharply. Not really. Everyone thinks I'm faking it, Mia. What if they're right? What if none of this actually makes a difference?" Mia's tone softened. "It does make a difference. To the kids who message you saying they feel seen because of your story, don't let the haters steal that from you." Later that week, Evelyn drafted an email inviting Barron to speak at her seminar on privilege and responsibility. It wasn't easy. Every word felt like swallowing pride. When Barron received it, he stared at the screen skeptically. "This feels like walking into a lion's den," he muttered to Mia. "But maybe it's worth it," she countered. "Show them you're serious. Besides, avoiding her won't fix anything." Reluctantly, Barron replied, accepting the invitation. As he hit send, unease settled in his chest. This wouldn't be easy, but perhaps it was necessary. Days before the seminar, Evelyn reached out to discuss logistics. Their conversation started stiffly, each guarded behind layers of professionalism. "I appreciate your willingness to participate," Evelyn said cautiously. "It's complicated," Barron admitted after a pause. "People expect me to fail. Or worse, succeed for the wrong reasons." Evelyn hesitated, then confessed, "I know what that feels like. My methods sometimes alienate even those I'm trying to help." For the first time, they shared a moment of mutual understanding, their public facades cracking under the pressure of authenticity. As the seminar approached, both prepared meticulously. Evelyn rehearsed counterpoints, determined not to repeat past mistakes. Barron crafted responses, bracing for potential attacks. Late one evening, Evelyn caught herself staring at notes about Barron's advocacy. There was no denying his passion, or its impact. Still, old habits die hard. She scribbled reminders to stay sharp, unsure whether admiration or rivalry would win out. Across town, Barron paced his living room, rehearsing lines aloud. "Stay calm," he told himself. "Don't let her get inside your head." Yet, despite his resolve, anxiety simmered beneath the surface. Whatever happened next, the stakes were higher than ever. Evelyn took the stage with an air of controlled fury, her presence commanding every ounce of attention in the room. Her voice cut through the silence like a blade, each word dripping with disdain. "Privilege isn't just wealth or status, it's the audacity to use activism as a PR stunt," she declared, her gaze sweeping over the audience before lingering pointedly on Barron. The crowd leaned forward, sensing the unspoken target of her critique. Evelyn continued, her tone sharp and unrelenting. "We see it everywhere. Elites who claim to care about change but contribute nothing meaningful beyond hollow gestures." The tension thickened, palpable enough to touch. Attendees exchanged uneasy glances, some nodding along while others shifted uncomfortably. Barron sat rigid in his seat, his jaw tightening with each passing second. He could feel the weight of her words pressing down on him, though she never once mentioned his name. For several long moments, Barron remained silent, his hands gripping the edge of the table, but then something inside him snapped. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor with a jarring sound that silenced the room. "How convenient," he began, his voice steady but laced with frustration. "To dismiss someone's efforts without truly understanding them. You accuse me, and others like me, of exploiting our platforms. Yet you weaponize shame instead of fostering dialogue." His eyes locked onto Evelyn's, blazing with a mix of anger and vulnerability. The audience held their breath, unsure whether this was defiance or desperation. Barron pressed on, his tone rising slightly. "If your goal is real change, Why not engage instead of alienate? The room fell eerily quiet as Barron paused, collecting himself. Then, in a softer but no less powerful voice, he shared something deeply personal. When I was 16, he admitted, his gaze dropping momentarily, I nearly broke under the pressure of living in the public eye. Anxiety consumed me and societal judgment made it worse. People dismissed me as spoiled, out of touch, just another rich kid. He looked up again, his expression raw. But what they didn't see was how hard I fought to find purpose beyond my last name. Gasps rippled through the audience. Many had never considered the human being behind the headlines. Even Evelyn seemed taken aback, her earlier confidence faltering visibly. Evelyn opened her mouth to respond but hesitated, her usual eloquence deserting her. She fumbled for words, her composure cracking under the weight of Barron's confession. I didn't realize, she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. For the first time, doubt flickered across her face. Had she misjudged him? Or worse, had her methods caused harm where she intended help? Her discomfort was evident, her fingers nervously adjusting the papers on the podium. The audience watched intently, sensing the shift in dynamics. As Evelyn processed Barron's words, a flicker of recognition passed between them. She saw past the privilege and fame to the person beneath, a young man grappling with immense expectations. Similarly, Barron noticed the passion behind Evelyn's anger, recognizing that her aggression stemmed from a desire to effect change, even if misguided. Their mutual understanding wasn't perfect, but it was enough to bridge the gap momentarily. The confrontation left both characters shaken yet reflective. Evelyn retreated inward, questioning whether her approach had become more about winning arguments than inspiring progress. Barron, too, reconsidered his own journey, wondering if he'd been too defensive in the face of criticism. This pivotal moment marked the beginning of a transformation, for themselves and for the relationship they were only starting to build. The seminar incident exploded across headlines, dominating social media feeds and late-night talk shows. News anchors dissected every moment, framing it as a generational clash between Evelyn's fiery idealism and Barron's raw vulnerability. Hashtags like Barron Stands Up and Evelyn Exposed trended globally, with fans praising Barron for his courage while critics lambasted Evelyn for her perceived elitism. Barron Trump proves he's more than just a name, one article read, highlighting his emotional confession. Another piece questioned whether Evelyn's methods had become outdated in an era demanding authenticity over rhetoric. For Barron, the praise felt bittersweet. For Evelyn, the backlash stung deeply. In the days following the seminar, Evelyn retreated from public appearances, canceling interviews and avoiding calls. She sat alone in her apartment, replaying Barron's words in her mind. Was I wrong? She whispered to herself, staring at her reflection in the window. Her closest friend, Rachel, visited unannounced. You need a break, Evelyn, she said gently. This isn't about your reputation. It's about you healing. I underestimated him, Evelyn admitted, her voice trembling. And now everyone thinks I'm out of touch. Rachel placed a hand on her shoulder. Maybe this is your chance to grow, to listen instead of lecture. Evelyn nodded reluctantly, though guilt still gnawed at her. Meanwhile, Barron navigated a whirlwind of attention. Messages flooded his inbox, fans thanking him for speaking out, journalists requesting interviews, and trolls accusing him of seeking sympathy. Mia, his confidant, noticed the toll it was taking. You're inspiring people, Barron, she told him during a phone call, but don't let their noise drown out why you started this in the first place. I know, he replied wearily, but sometimes I wonder if any of it makes a difference. Or am I just adding to the chaos? Despite his doubts, he couldn't ignore the young voices reaching out, sharing stories of how his advocacy resonated with them. It fueled him, but barely enough to keep going. One evening, Barron received an unexpected email from Evelyn. Its tone was humble, almost vulnerable. Dear Barron, I owe you an apology. I misjudged you, and for that I'm truly sorry. Your resilience has given me much to reflect on, and I'd like to make amends, if you're open to it. Sincerely, Evelyn. Barron stared at the screen, surprised by its sincerity. After a moment, he replied, agreeing to meet privately. They chose a quiet cafe tucked away from prying eyes. Over steaming cups of coffee, they spoke candidly, for the first time without pretense or hostility. I've spent years tearing down privilege without considering the person behind it, Evelyn confessed, her hands wrapped tightly around her mug. "You reminded me there's humanity in everyone, even those I disagree with. And I've spent so long trying to prove myself beyond my family name," Barron admitted, his gaze dropping briefly. "Sometimes I wonder if anything I do actually matters, or if it's all just noise." For once, neither felt the need to defend themselves. Instead, they listened, finding solace in shared struggles. As their conversation deepened, an idea began to form. "What if we worked together?" Evelyn suggested hesitantly. "Combine your platform with my research to address youth mental health? We could create something meaningful, not performative." Barron considered this, intrigued. It might be messy, but yeah, I think it could work. They sketched out plans, blending Evelyn's expertise with Barron's relatable perspective. Both recognized this collaboration as a turning point, a chance to move beyond past mistakes and embrace growth. By the end of their meeting, both left with renewed determination. Evelyn resolved to approach activism with empathy rather than judgment. Barron committed to staying true to his values despite inevitable criticism. "We can't control what others say about us," Barron said as they parted ways. "But we can define success on our own terms." Evelyn smiled faintly. "And maybe inspire others to do the same." Their journey wasn't over, but for the first time they faced it not as adversaries, but as allies. Evelyn returned to her classroom with a renewed sense of purpose, her lectures now infused with empathy rather than accusation. She began each session by asking students to share their thoughts before offering her own, creating an atmosphere of collaboration instead of confrontation. One day, a student approached her after class. "Dr. Hartman, your perspective feels different," the young woman said hesitantly. "It's like you're really listening now." Evelyn smiled softly. "Maybe I finally learned how." Her colleagues noticed the shift as well, praising her ability to inspire without alienating. For the first time in years, Evelyn felt connected, not just to her work, but to the people around her. The fire that once burned out of frustration had transformed into a steady flame of passion. Barron, too, found himself changing. He stopped chasing validation from critics who would never see him as more than his last name, and focused instead on staying true to his values. In quiet moments at home, he journaled about his journey, his fears, his triumphs, and everything in between. During a live stream for his advocacy campaign, a fan asked, "How do you stay so grounded?" Barron chuckled. "Honestly, by accepting that I'll never please everyone. What matters is knowing I'm proud of what I'm doing." His balance of public advocacy and private authenticity brought him peace. Fame no longer felt like a cage. It was simply part of who he was, not all he was. Over time, Evelyn and Barron's relationship evolved into something neither had anticipated, a mentorship-like friendship. They met regularly, discussing everything from project updates to personal struggles. "You remind me why I started this work," Evelyn admitted during one meeting. "And you challenge me to be better." "And you push me to think deeper," Barron replied. "We make a good team." Their mutual support became a cornerstone of their growth, proving that even the most unlikely alliances could lead to profound connections. Together, they launched their joint initiative, Voices of Tomorrow, aimed at destigmatizing mental health discussions among young adults. The campaign blended Evelyn's academic rigor with Barron's relatable storytelling, creating a powerful message that resonated globally. At the launch event, Evelyn took the stage first. "This isn't about us, it's about giving a voice to those who feel silenced," she declared, her tone warm yet firm. When Barron joined her, the crowd erupted in applause. "We're here because we believe change starts with honesty," he said. "Let's talk about what really matters." Media coverage hailed their partnership as groundbreaking, framing it as proof that meaningful progress could transcend ideological divides. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Social media buzzed with praise for their ability to rise above past conflicts. One influencer tweeted, "If Evelyn and Barron can bridge gaps, maybe there's hope for the rest of us." Even skeptics softened, acknowledging the sincerity behind their efforts. Their collaboration inspired others in the spotlight to address personal struggles openly, fostering a culture of transparency and understanding. Barron's journeys sparked a ripple effect across industries. Celebrities began sharing their own battles with mental health, encouraged by his vulnerability. Influencers followed suit, using their platforms to amplify messages of resilience and self-acceptance. People are realizing it's okay to not be okay, Barron told Evelyn during a phone call. That's what we wanted, to normalize these conversations. And it's working, Evelyn added, pride evident in her voice. Their work reshaped societal attitudes, turning empathy into a central theme in public discourse. Reflecting on their journey, Evelyn recognized the importance of humility. I thought I had all the answers, she confessed to a colleague. But Barron taught me that sometimes the best way to lead is to listen. For Barron, the lesson was equally transformative. Success isn't about proving yourself to others, it's about staying true to who you are, he wrote in a reflective post. Both emerged stronger, their experiences serving as reminders that growth often comes from discomfort. As their initiative gained momentum, Evelyn and Barron found fulfillment not in fame or accolades, but in the lives they touched. Together they redefined success, not as individual achievement, but as collective impact. We're leaving something behind that's bigger than either of us, Evelyn said during a final meeting. Barron nodded. A legacy of unity, growth, and hope. Their story ended not with applause, but with action, a testament to the power of resilience, redemption, and shared purpose. Evelyn stood backstage after a panel discussion, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched the edge of the podium. She glanced at Barron, who leaned casually against the wall, scrolling through messages on his phone. His calm demeanor was a stark contrast to her lingering nerves. "You've changed," she said softly, breaking the silence. "Not just me. You've changed how people see you." Barron looked up, meeting her gaze. "Because I stopped trying to be what everyone else wanted. It's exhausting living for approval." Their exchange underscored a truth they'd both come to embrace. Authenticity wasn't just admirable, it was essential. In a world quick to judge, staying true to oneself created connections that transcended fame or status. The journey hadn't been easy for either of them. Evelyn had faced backlash for admitting her mistakes. Barron had weathered criticism for exposing his vulnerabilities. Yet, their willingness to confront uncomfortable truths had transformed not only themselves, but also those around them. "I used to think vulnerability was weakness," Evelyn confessed during a quiet moment over coffee. "But now I see it's courage in its purest form." "And it works," Barron added with a small smile. "People don't connect with perfection. They connect with honesty." Their shared experiences proved that growth often came from pain, and redemption was born from openness. As their collaboration gained traction, Evelyn and Barron became symbols of resilience. They reminded audiences that, behind every headline, was a person navigating life's complexities. "Fame doesn't define us," Barron told a reporter during an interview. "It amplifies who we already are, the good and the bad." Evelyn nodded in agreement. "And it forces us to ask hard questions. Who am I beyond this spotlight? What legacy do I want to leave?" Their reflections encouraged others to look past labels, recognizing the humanity beneath the glamour. In the final chapter of their story, Evelyn and Barron offered a message of hope. Their struggles hadn't broken them. They'd built them. "We're proof that change is possible," Evelyn wrote in a heartfelt social media post. "Even when the odds feel insurmountable, there's always a way forward." Barron echoed her sentiment in a video address. "Adversity shapes us, but it doesn't have to define us. Keep fighting, keep growing." Together, they inspired countless others to face their own battles with courage, knowing that even the hardest journeys could lead to profound transformation.